Welcome to Chapter 1 and one of the first lessons that you will hear and see on our interactive notes and with our flipped classroom. It's very important, Chapter 1, because it tells us all about the tools that we need for geometry, and this will be used all the way until June. So it's really important that you pay attention and remember all of these geometric terms and how to name points and segments and all of that. You can see geometry everywhere, concerts, in the classroom, in some of your other classes as well, and they're the building blocks of geometry, especially points and lines and planes, and we're going to learn all about them in this chapter. And we're going to start by being able to visualize things in geometry, and this is really important because we're actually looking at a piece of paper, but we need to think about things in 3 dimensions, and really the piece of paper is only sort of 2-dimensional. So it's really important that we understand how to visualize geometry. Chapter 1, Section 1, we are talking about nets and drawings for visualizing geometry, and the idea will be able to, or the objective is to make nets and drawings of 3-dimensional figures. And hopefully this getting ready will look familiar to you, or it does already look familiar to you. As you follow along in your interactive notes, you will see that the essential understanding is the fact that you can represent a 3-dimensional object with a 2-dimensional figure using different or special drawing techniques. So we're going to go back to the solve it and just say what shapes you would expect to see on the walls. Let's take a peek. So if you can see here, they are shining the flashlights on this figure, which happens to be a triangular prism, and they want to know what shapes would show up on the wall. So if we're looking at this flashlight, it is shining towards one of these faces of the prism, and on the wall, what would you expect to see? Write that down in your interactive notes. This flashlight here shines on this particular face, and I'd like you to write down in your interactive notes what you would expect to see here. We'll talk about that in class. So hopefully you were able to visualize what was projecting or what would be projected on the wall. And the thing that we're going to be talking about first is a net. A net is a 2-dimensional diagram that you can fold to form a 3-dimensional figure. And a net shows all of the surfaces of a figure in one view. So as you can see in this problem, we have this net, okay, and we fold it. So the first question that is asked is which letters will be on the top and the front of the cube. So what happens is we visualize this flat surface becoming 3-dimensional. We fold E down and F up. B wraps around with A, and D wraps around as well. So what would be on the back would be probably the letter A. The left side is B. F becomes the bottom. So the question is, what's on the top and what's on the front? Well, C is going to be on the front, and E would be on the top. Next, the interactive notes ask you to solve this got it, where they use the same net in problem 1, but it folds with B in the front, and they want to know what letters will be on the top and the right side. Now, I'm not going to do this for you. I'm going to go back a page so you can see the figure, but keep in mind we want B to be the front. So using the same net, and we put B in the front, what would be the top and what would be the right? See if you can visualize that on your own. I will check it in class. Next, we're going to look at problem number 2, where we're drawing a net from a solid. So as we see here, we have a graham cracker box, and what we want to do is unfold the box to make it into a net. So right now it's 3-dimensional. We want to unfold it so it becomes 2-dimensional, and we want to label the net with the dimensions. So as you can see, they unfolded it. They did actually take off the labels, but they did measure it. the bottom was 14, the height was 20, and sort of the depth was 6 centimeters. So as you can see, they've labeled where it would be 6 centimeters, they labeled where it would be 14 centimeters, and they labeled where it would be 20 centimeters. So what I'd like you to do is copy that into your interactive notes and label the dimensions as well. And we're going to add to that together in class, but for right now I just want you to sort of copy the net into the box provided for you in your interactive notes. The next thing I'd like you to do in your interactive notes is one, to figure out how many pairs of matching surfaces the graham cracker box contains. In other words, how many sides or surfaces or faces, let's use the word faces or surfaces, does the graham cracker box have that are actually the same dimensions? Like, for example, they might be 6 by 20, or maybe it's 20 by 14. How many pairs of matching surfaces are there? And try to explain that. Next, what I'd like you to do is to look at the got it here, number 2, and determine what the net is for the figure. So try to create a net for the figure on the right. It is a triangular prism, and I'd like you to figure out how many surfaces, how many faces does it have, and what are the dimensions of each of the faces, and create a net for that in your interactive notes. Next, we want to look at isometric drawings. An isometric drawing shows a corner view of a three-dimensional figure. It allows you to see the top, the front, and the side of the figure. It's much easier if you draw an isometric drawing using isometric dot paper. And this is a simple drawing of a file cabinet in an isometric drawing. As you can see, you can kind of visualize the top, you can visualize the front where you'd pull out the handles, and the side. So, two things we have done so far: a net that shows a three-dimensional figure folded out, and this isometric drawing that shows three-dimensional figure, and it uses slanted lines to represent the depth. And we want to look at problem number 3, and I want to actually have you create it in your interactive notes. Here I don't want you doing the got it. I'd like you to actually follow through problem 3, their isometric drawing, and copy the steps so that you can recreate this cube structure right here. I'm not worried about the got it. I just want you to recreate that. So you may want to pause the video and create it, and then come back or press play. One of the other ways we can visualize three-dimensional objects in a two-dimensional world is with orthographic drawings. And an orthographic drawing is another way to represent a three-dimensional figure. It shows 3 separate views. They're not all together. There's 3 different drawings. It would have a top view, a front view, and a side view. Some of you may have seen this already if you've taken technology education or engineering with Mr. Galante or maybe Mr. Doobie. So here we have our orthographic drawing of a picture over here to the right, and what I'd like you to do is to copy that into your interactive notes. Please keep in mind that the solid lines are representing visible edges, so if you were looking down from the top you'd actually see this edge. There are edges that are not seen, and those are used as dashed lines. Okay, and this would be our view from the top, our view from the front, and our view from the right. So we want to have all of those drawn in our interactive notes. And so we can simply copy that. Next, what I'm going to ask you to do is create your own orthographic drawing on the top of the next page of your interactive notes with the got it below, or the got it you're going to see next. So at the top of your interactive notes, I'd like you to create the orthographic drawing for this isometric drawing where we have the front, the right, and keep in mind the first thing we want to draw is the top when we do an orthographic drawing. So you should have 3 different pictures, a top, a front, and a right for this particular drawing, and I want you to put that in your interactive notes and do the best you can. and we will check that in class. As we finish up here, I would like you to practice a little bit more with the lesson check. I'd like you to do lesson check number 1, which is drawing the net, and make sure you draw the net and label its dimensions. I'll check that in class. I'd like you to do that on your own, and then proceed to problem number 4. Problem number 4 asks if you understand everything by understanding the vocabulary. Is A an isometric drawing, an orthographic drawing, a net, or is it none of the above? Please write that in your interactive notes. For 4B, please tell me if that's isometric, orthographic, a net, or none. For C, please tell me if that's isometric, orthographic, a net, or none. And for D, please tell me if that's isometric, orthographic, net, or none, and write that in your interactive note. And the last thing I'd like to have you do with your interactive notes for class is to complete problems 6 and 7 and 8 on your own. And basically all you need to do is write down the letter which net matches the figure for number 6, A, B, or C, which net matches the figure for number 7, A, B, or C, and which net matches the figure for number 8, A, B, or C. And then you'll be completed with your interactive notes. And feel free to go back and review any of this material at any time. We'll see you in class.